Hi, welcome back to the study. We're going to summarize what we've been studying in chapter 3, and we're just going to kind of compress it into a few minutes and let you review that as you have listened and watched to the other videos in our Bible study in Mark chapter 3. Now we can kind of compress it together and see what the core issues are. Jesus starts out by this whole process in the early part of the chapter of healing someone on the Sabbath, and of course he's ridiculed by the Pharisees for that. They are trying to find desperately a way to get rid of him because they do not want to accept who he is. They do not want to believe that he is the Son of God, even though when the demons come out of people that he casts them out of, they recognize Jesus as the Son of God. And they, of course, see that as demonic, and to be a son of God, as we talked about, is to be a Greco-Roman pagan god, because they had sons, not Yahweh, the God of Israel. He is but one God, according to their decree in Deuteronomy. The Lord is one, and he is, and we believe that. But they could not perceive God coming to be incarnate, and so, of course, they start spreading all kinds of rumors about him. We talked also about how Jesus selected the 12 apostles from amidst of the many disciples, two key groups there, disciples and apostles. Those are ones sent specifically with messages. Those 12 were the apostles. They were selected from the disciples. But there were many more disciples. We figured it out that there was probably 110 to 120 different disciples that followed Jesus somewhat regularly, and that was kind of his congregation. And we see that the heat and the pressure picks up when he gets kind of trapped in his own house, and they're saying, this man casts out Satan by the power of Satan. Well, Jesus says, the logic of what you're saying isn't right. And of course, when people want something bad enough, they'll say anything to get it. We talked about that, where these people just kind of almost get talking crazy, and that's a really bad problem. People do that today. Some people think because they say it, it's true. Or some people say if they say it enough, it will become true. And these people were just getting desperate. The Pharisees and the Sadducees and these different groups of religious Jews were getting crazy to get rid of Jesus because I think they probably really knew he was the way, he was the truth, but they weren't ready to accept that, much like many people of our day and age. Now, Jesus tries to throw logic into that. Think about it. If you are going to do something to rob somebody, you got to bind them up first. You don't let them loose and then steal their stuff. Satan can't work against Satan. A house divided against itself cannot stand. And he's trying to use logic, and of course that doesn't usually work when people are heated to a fervor, and when people are desperate to find a way to get rid of somebody, they will. And he knew that. And he also understood that that was part of the process that was going to happen. And the whole issue comes down to this thing of finally his mother and his brothers come to get him because they don't want him to get in trouble. They're tired of the risk that they think Jesus is taking to do ministry and to be an effective servant of God. And Mary knows in her heart really who Jesus is, but struggles in her flesh. And so they come and get Jesus to take him home, and let's just pull out of this now while we can. And Jesus defines family. And Jesus says, when they say your mother and your brothers are outside before you, he says, who is my mother and who are my brothers? And it's kind of interesting because it's not who we would have thought normally, because we always say blood is thicker than water. And Jesus says, hey, you know what? Those who obey God and serve God in our obedience to me, because I am the way, the truth, and the life. He doesn't use those exact words, but we find that later in the Gospel of John. Those who understand the gospel, those who live by the truth of salvation that I bring, that all encompasses the gospel message that we see in the other three Gospels too. They, he says, are my brothers. They are my mother. They are my sisters. Jesus is effectively saying, blood isn't thicker than water. Water is thicker than blood. And we made the analysis or the comparison to the waters of baptism, those waters which identify us with Christ and his church, those which initiate us into our life of discipleship in Christ. Those are the waters that are important. And Jesus is very clearly saying the real family is your spiritual family. The real family are those who you are united with in Christ. Yes, water is thicker than blood, and that doesn't make sense, but neither did those Pharisees make any sense either.